Man, look at God giving us another video back up to doing that. But yeah, right here we have a video by More Sporting, logically, and it's what happened to the most random NBA All Stars ever. Uh, a lot of the times, you know, there's like NBA All Stars. People are like, how did this happen? Why would they be that? You know, a lot of one time like one recent one or closer recent was like when the Atlanta Hawks were doing really good in like 2014, 2015. They had four All Stars. It was like Al Horford, uh, and Jeff Teague and Corver and I think Paul Millsap. I think it's Paul. I think his name's Paul. I think it was Paul Millsap. And they were like, a lot of people were saying like Corver and Jeff Teague shouldn't have been there. So let's see more All Stars that were random and what happened to them. But shout out to Jeff Teague though. His Club 520 podcast is fire, and he's from Indiana, so we're there. But let's get into the vid.
The NBA All-Star Game is meant to be a showcase for the best players in the world. LeBron, Giannis, Jokic, the true superstars of the league. But sometimes it doesn't quite work out that way. Because of weird quirks in the voting system, injuries, or just simply bad decisions, sometimes the most random players can end up with an All-Star selection on their resumes, and it certainly stands out when you look at it within the history of the league. First up are probably the weirdest All-Star selections ever, and from the same team, Kyle Korver and Jeff Teague
Just
in
what I was
2015.
talking about.
Both of these guys averaged under 15 points per game, yet made an all-star team as perimeter players, which is extremely rare. That Hawks team was, of course, the 60-win Mike Budenholzer team that also had the entire starting lineup be named Players of the Month. Now, I'm not trying to say that these guys didn't deserve to make it. They both had great seasons, and winning 60 games isn't easy at all. Korver averaged just 12.1 points per game, but also a crazy 49.2% from three-point range,
crazy.
while Teague averaged basically 14-8 on one of the best teams in the league. Those Hawks teams didn't last much longer, though, due to a lack of playoff success, and just 2 years later, Korver ended up in Cleveland before bouncing around to a few other spots on his way to retiring as one of the best shooters of all time. Teague would last just one more full season in Atlanta after making that all-star team for the same reasons, as the franchise looked to rebuild, and he ended up in Indiana, then Minnesota, and a few other places on his way out of the league. Both of these guys deserve to be considered as all-stars in that 2015 season, Korver as an injury replacement and Teague as a reserve, but I think we all knew at the time that it had more to do with team success than it did their place as one of the best players at their respective positions. Next up is Tyson.
But like also the thing about it is right is like most of the time where there's all stars like you don't expect, it's like they're usually injury replacements or like people like they usually weren't voted in, but they were there because someone else got injured, you know. So but Jeff Teague and Kyle Korver were really tough that season. Like they said Korver shot 49% from three. The fuck? That don't make no sense. Like damn near half of my 3-pointers are going in. That's crazy, bro. All right, let's see, we got
Tyson Chandler, and when I think of him, I think of his critical role on the 2011 Dallas Mavericks team that won the title. He was
so tough on that
incredibly
team.
impactful defensively and came out of relative nowhere to be a key piece in a championship team.
So tough
However,
on
that
team.
2011 season is not actually when he was selected to the All-Star team. After winning the title in 2011, Chandler got a nice new contract with the New York Knicks, where he would join up with those fun Carmelo Anthony teams in the beginning of the decade, and his defensive abilities immediately translated to some pretty successful Knicks teams. In his first season in New York, he won Defensive Player of the Year, was selected third team All-NBA, and then the following season, he was named as an All-Star reserve for the Eastern Conference in 2013. But then for both him and the Knicks, things started to fall apart pretty quickly. After just one more season, he ended up back in Dallas before bouncing around to a few other teams as a role player, never coming close to the impact that he had from 2010 to 2013. As a former second overall pick, it's certainly disappointing that he only made one All-Star team in his career, but for him to overcome injury and other issues in the beginning and find his way to a championship and an All-Star selection is still pretty cool. Next up is
Tyson Chandler was like so cold in that 2011 series with the Mavs and Heat. I always said whenever that playoff series was happening, when the finals happened, I was saying, hey, the Mavs got it, man. I was the only one that believed in the Mavs, man. I was the only one around me, around my friends, family. Everyone thought LeBron and Bosh and Wade were going to get it done. I said, nah, Dirk got it. And Dirk did it. Shout out to Dirk. Shout out to Tyson. Shout out to Ball Jakey. Shout out to the Jet.
Former forgotten top 5 pick Devin Harris.
Oh, Devin
he
Harris.
found himself in New Jersey in 2008.
This must have been real early in his career for him doing
being
it.
traded as the centerpiece of a Jason Kidd trade. And just a year later, he was named an All-Star. He had by far his best year of his career in 2008-2009 as a lightning quick guard that could get to the rim and defend really well. He was selected as a reserve in 2009, and it looked like he would be a great long-term piece for the Nets. However, just 2 years later, he was sent to Utah as a piece in the Deron Williams trade, which is pretty crazy that he was good enough to be a main piece in a trade for both Kidd and then Williams as well. Unfortunately for him, his efficiency started to drop off after that All-Star season, and by the time the Williams trade happened, his stock around the league had dipped a good amount. He lasted one full season in Utah before bouncing around the league, and at each of those stops, he was a good player, but nothing close to the All-Star form that he showed that one season in New Jersey. This was a classic case of a good guard getting put in the perfect situation to be the main guy on a bad team and taking advantage of it. However, despite the numbers, Harris was just never good enough to capitalize on that season and become a perennial All-Star. Moving on to another...
Yeah, I never knew about prime Devin Harris. Only one I knew was about the one when he was on the Mavericks, because I just remember him from 2K. He's somebody, you know, like a 2K player. Like, I know so many bad players just because of 2K.
New Jersey net Brook Lopez. In the later years of his career, Lopez has become a critical piece in Milwaukee, providing three-point spacing and great rim protection as a nearly perfect front-court fit alongside Giannis, helping them win a championship in the process. However, the craziest part about that is that Lopez was a completely different kind of player in his younger years, and still good enough to earn an All-Star selection in 2013. He averaged nearly 20 points per game that season, but that was really all that he was known for. He wasn't a very good rebounder at all, wasn't a good defender, and never shot threes. He was exclusively a post-up big on a bad Nets team, and he was actually really good. This is the kind of season that would really never happen in today's version of the NBA. After some injury problems in the following few seasons, the Nets moved on from Lopez and sent him to the Lakers in exchange for D'Angelo Russell and taking on the salary of Timofey Mozgov. At the time, it seemed like Lopez's career was pretty much over, as he didn't make much of an impact in LA and went into the 2018 offseason as a former top 10 pick that looked pretty much washed at that point. He signed a small deal with the Bucks, and then everything changed. He
turned up.
Completely transforming his game into who we now know him as in Milwaukee. An incredible turnaround for a player that not only looked like his career was pretty much over and then turned it around, but that also made a transition from All-Star to role player about as well as any player has in the history of the league. Next up is the All-Star from this video whose career fell apart the fastest, Andrew Bynum. Now you might think that calling Bynum a random All-Star is a bit harsh, considering he was at one point one of the best bigs in the league and a critical piece of a championship team, but given how his career turned out, it feels appropriate. After struggling the first few seasons of his career, coming into the NBA at just 18 years old, Bynum eventually developed into a starter for the Lakers when he could stay healthy. He progressed so much that in the 2011-12 season, at just 24 years old, he was named an All-Star starter in the Western Conference, cementing his status as one of the best centers in the league. The Lakers were in a weird spot at the time as the roster was still solid, but they probably needed to shake things up to be a true top-tier contender. So after that season, the Lakers went ahead with their super team experiment, trading for Dwight Howard and Steve Nash to try and win another championship with Kobe Bryant. And Bynum was sent to Philadelphia in the Howard trade. So you might think that since the Sixers just traded for a guy that was an All-Star starter a few months prior, they'd get a lot of value out of him, right?
Not at all.
Bynum dealt with knee injury issues and played 0 games for the Sixers, which was the beginning of the process in Philadelphia. He then ended up in Cleveland and Indiana, but was never able to stay healthy. So in 2012, Bynum was a starter on the All-Star team as a 24-year-old, and once that season was over, he played exactly 26 more NBA games in his career. Truly, one of the most random All-Stars of all time. Moving on to
it's crazy because, like, if Bynum doesn't get hurt, maybe the Lakers have more dominance. Maybe they, because the thing is, right, if Bynum doesn't get hurt, they don't do that trade for Dwight. And then you don't have that whole situation there. And maybe Kobe doesn't tear his Achilles. You know, maybe there's a lot of things that change. Like if some certain things that happen, it's crazy. We look at that, but yeah, I guess Bynum is a random one because like his career after that was like just fell off a cliff because the knees just gave up on him.
What I would say is one of the more forgotten NBA players of all time, Chris Kaman.
Oh, the Kaman!
The 2003 draft, one of the greatest drafts of all time. You of course have LeBron, D Wade.
He was so
Carmelo,
ugly in
Bosh,
every
but there's
2K.
another
I promise
All-Star right there at 6th overall, Chris Kaman. He Carmelo.
I'm messing it.
Moving on to what I would say is one of the more forgotten NBA players of all time, Chris Kaman. When you go back and think about the 2003 draft, one of the greatest drafts of all time, you of course have LeBron, Wade, Carmelo, Chris Bosh, but there's another All-Star right there at 6th overall, Chris Kaman.
Hey,
unfortunately ended up on the Clippers, but he was a really productive player for years, peaking at over 18 points per game in the 09-10 season, which was good enough to earn him a replacement All-Star selection in 2010. The other bigs on that team were Pau Gasol, Dirk, Amare, and Zach Randolph, so that's really good company. As is the story with most of the players on this list, though, things would not last much longer for Kaman. He played just 32 games the following season, and then before the 11-12 season was moved to the Hornets as part of the Chris Paul trade, and his career steadily declined from there due to injuries and age. If he had been healthy more often, he honestly could have made more All-Star teams with the Clippers, but due to the trade and other issues, that one season in 2010 was as good as it got for him. Moving on now to maybe the worst NBA All-Star ever, Jamal McGlure. He started his career with the Hornets and was a solid big for them. Eventually,
I've heard of him, but I don't even know what the Jamal McGlure was doing on the court. I don't know.
Actually developing into a starter and a 30-minute per game guy in his third season in the league. Then in year 4, his minutes and stats took another jump as he was named an All-Star in 2004. The front courts in the East weren't exactly the most talented they've ever been back then, as really good but not great players like Kenyon Martin made the team. Averaging a double-double was cool and all, and McGlure was a good defensive player, but I'd be shocked if most of you knew who he even was beyond just as a trivia question as possibly the worst player to ever make an All-Star team. Moving on now, and it's getting pretty clear how much the talent has truly grown in the NBA over the past 15 years. Jameer Nelson is the next player on the list, and I want to be clear,
I love
was
Jameer in
really
2K.
good. When healthy, he was one of the best players on a Magic team that made the finals in 2009 and was a really solid point guard that added a nice scoring punch as well. In the 08-09 season, in which Orlando made the finals behind Dwight Howard, Nelson averaged a career-high 16.7 points per game and was selected as an All-Star reserve in the East. However, he only played 42 games in that regular season due to injury and didn't even play in the All-Star game as a result of injury as well. Again, no disrespect, but a guy averaging under 17 points per game that played half the season making an All-Star team is pretty wild. After that season, as was the case with most of that Magic roster, Nelson was solid but unremarkable, and although he did manage to stick around for a while in the league and became more of a facilitator later in his career, he never got close to All-Star form again. Next up is one of my favorite players to use in 2K or NBA Live back in the day, Mehmet Okur. He was a solid
Mehmet Okur. I like Mehmet Okur just because his name was unique, bro.
Player right away after joining the league as a 23-year-old, but really hit his stride when he ended up with the Jazz in year 3. He was really ahead of his time as a floor-spacing, skilled big. It was a really difficult cover for defenses while also being incredibly durable. He put up great numbers in his prime in Utah, averaging 18-9 and playing all 82 games in the 05-06 season. And the following year, his stats did dip slightly, but he was recognized as an All-Star in 2007 as an injury replacement. This is one of those that in hindsight seems like an indictment on the talent of the league at the time, but this guy was really good. It honestly probably would have been prioritized more offensively in the modern game and is far from the worst All-Star on this list. Unfortunately for Okur, his NBA career was pretty short-lived since he came over as an older player, but for a few more years after his All-Star selection, he was still a solid starter in Utah before leaving the NBA in 2012. And last up now is one that I completely forgot about, Mo Williams. He established himself as a really good scoring guard in Milwaukee.
Mo Williams is the #1 scapegoat for people saying LeBron had no help. He had no help ever. He only had one All-Star. LeBron ain't had no help for real. Like, it makes sense why he left. I would leave too if the only help I had was Mo Williams. And shout out to Mo Williams. There's no disrespect, but gang, I can't beat the Spurs with just you, gang. I need help. Help. Probably Bron.
After breaking into the NBA as a second-round pick and eventually developed into one of the best players on the team. After 4 years, though, he was sent to Cleveland to try and help LeBron win a title with the Cavs.
I would say that Mo Williams is cool, man, because he always had 2 sleeves on. That's what I love about Mo Williams.
A few moves they made to desperately try and keep
double sleeves.
Williams was supposed to provide a spark and take some offensive responsibility off of LeBron, and for the most part, he did that, putting up a career-high 17.8 points per game in his first season with the team and playing nearly 40 minutes a game in the postseason. That year was the best of his career, and he was rewarded with a 2009 All-Star selection. But unfortunately for him, LeBron would go to leave to Miami in 2010, and in the 2010-11 season, he was sent to the Clippers in exchange for Baron Davis, a salary dump that landed the Cavs a first-round pick that became Kyrie Irving just a few months later. After bouncing around the league for a few seasons, Williams actually ironically made his way back to the Cavs and ended up winning a title with them in 2016. And those are the most random NBA All-Stars in the history of the league.
Yeah, this was a good video right here, man. As always, I'm always a history junkie for learning things. It was a good video from More Sporting Logically. what happened to the most random NBA All Stars ever. I feel like on this list though, the most randoms obviously for Jamal McGlure, because no offense, I don't know you gang. Andrew Bynum, because he only had a little bit of time. Devin Harris is a wild one. At the time, Tyson was kind of tough, so it made sense. But like, yeah, but yeah, a lot of them were like injury replacements though. So like, not a lot of them were reserves. So yeah, that was a great vid. And shout out to you saving me from that other video, because that other video was